My name is Nicholas Burton, and I live in Grenfell Tower with my wife Pily, Maria Del Pilar, for over 33 years. I was born close to the tower, and my family were all from around the area. And I grew up living and playing around Latimer Road and Lancaster West Estate. Personally, I had a difficult childhood, but the area was really a great place to grow up. Everybody was in and out of everybody else's houses, contrary to some preconceptions that it was a very safe place to grow up. Because it was such a tight-knitted community, people had no fears of breaking-ins or anybody. So everybody kept their keys on a piece of string, which was grabbed through the letterbox. So I remember those days. And in the 70s were exciting times, and there was so much going on. But the main thing was, it was a community, and the community was built up of layer upon layer of people coming into the area. People who came into this country to help build things here. My father came over from St. Lucia to drive the buses. There was a big West Indian community and Spanish community stretching back from the Spanish Civil War. So I grew up with Spanish kids in my class at Holland Park and a whole range of kids that I grew up with. Around 1983, when I was still in my sixth form, they asked me if I wanted to come to this Spanish discotheque on a Sunday. And it's called Fubert's, which was just off Carnaby Street. And that's where I met Pily. She was amazing, flamboyant, very friendly. She talked to everybody, and I mean everybody. If she got into the lift, by the time you got out, she knew everybody's name and their family history. She loved dancing. She was incredibly magnetic, wonderful person. But because she was a bit older than me, I thought she was out of my league. Pily actually lived in the tower, and she was one of the very first residents, the only person that ever lived in her flat. She moved in the early 70s, so that after Fubert's, we would walk back to Labatt Grove, and Pily would invite us to her flat, where we played cards and listened to music with her parents, who were always there. Pily was born in a place called Ferrol, and that's in Galicia, in the province of Coruña, in the northwest corner of Spain. In this area, which is a sort of naval dockyard, Pily's mother's family were all in the Navy. They're very wealthy, very high status. Her father came from an enormous family, so if you walk down around Ferrol, you couldn't help but bump into some of Pily's family. After Pily's mother was widowed during the war, I don't know which war in Spain, sorry, she married Antonio, Pily's father. And Pily was born in the 40s and grew up in Ferrol. The family also took in children of two friends and brought them up alongside Pily. They would always call themselves brother and sister. Manny, who became a professor of fine arts in Savannah in America, and also Jose Maria, who was also an academic and became a professor in London. The family had various businesses, but they decided to come to London when Pily was still in her teens. They bought a large house in North Kensington for about £6,000, if only now. Being very feisty and outgoing, Pily learned English very quickly. So well that she didn't even have a hint of a Spanish accent, even though she spoke fluent Spanish, also fluent Portuguese, Italian, and French. After school, she started work, initially in the catering. She met her first husband when she was around 17 years old, and also fell pregnant and had a son, Victor. Soon after moving into Grenfell, She got divorced from Victor's father. When I met Pily, she was living in Grenfell, and Victor, her son, had already had a young family of his own, living in Clarendon Walk. Gradually, a relationship developed, and I moved in sock by sock. And my mother asked, "Where's all your clothes?" And I explained, "I have a girlfriend, and she's around your age." Right. Yeah, thank you. We were together for 34 years, and we got married in 2000 after being together for 16. There was always music in our house. People coming and going, lots of food, lots of friends, my wife's friends, her parents' friends, and lots of Spanish music. And her parents were very good singers. Her father sang in a Galician choir. And the Galician people are not like other Spanish people. They're really Celts, lots of red hair, blonde hair, blue eyes, green eyes. And also the music is very Celtic. Lots of bagpipes and dancing like Irish dancing. The Galician community around Portobello is very strong because there's a big Spanish school there. So when people come over from Galicia or any part of Spain, they'll also come to the Spanish school. There's always people around who Pily would invite to join us. But it wasn't just the Spanish community, the Portuguese community, also the Moroccans, the West Indian community with their music too. We all mixed together. Pily was very much part of all of this, and she loved reggae music a lot. And she danced to everything. You couldn't stop her. You could actually stop the whole family. And her father and mother just loved music as well. And even when they got much older, into their 80s, I'd come home from work and they'd be playing music incredibly loud, and I'd be telling them to turn it down. And I'd be saying to Pily, "This is the wrong way round." Yeah. But I got on with all of them, her parents, who treated me like a son. Victor, her son, was actually a year older than me. And her first husband, when we went on holiday to Portugal, I met him and he was very nice to me. Everybody just got along. Food was very important. Pily's paella was internationally known. Everybody came to our house wanting paella. Everybody just loved her cooking. There was never anything delivered. Everybody wanted freshly cooked. I worked in the wine trade, so there's always excellent wine around. Food and music. We really had a fantastic life. Brilliant neighbours, like Debbie Lamprow, who was always in our house nattering with Pily.
Do you want to just grab yourself a glass of water?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Pily was just brilliant with people. She always talked a lot. And we used to have a joke that men think that women talk a lot and women think that you talk a lot. So she really talked. She knew everybody on Portobello Road. You go past every store and it would be Pily, Pily, Pily. She knew everybody and everybody knew her. She was a very beautiful and could have chosen anybody really. I don't know why she chose me. But from when we got together, we were never apart. Pily loved fashion. She was always an amazing dresser, full of colours, totally flamboyant, but it was always her own style. She might go out and buy something for hundreds of pounds and then put it with something that cost $2.99, and people would just go, wow, because she had an eye and an understanding how to put things together. She always understood how to carry things off. She had class and style and just knew what worked. She had a fabulous sense of style. She was very independent. She earned her own money, always worked, and she loved spending it dressing up, entertaining her family and friends. I love my wife, and I was in complete awe of her because the world generally revolved around her. Wherever she went, everybody was for Pily. She wasn't a princess or anything. She was just a people's person, talking to people, making friends. She was just an extraordinary woman. And she was like that at work. She worked as a contract manager for several years in several hospitals in and around the area, but at the end ended up at St. Charles Hospital for many years. She looked after the porters, domestics, and catering staff. So she knew many people. She was a big personality in every hospital she worked in. Everybody knew Pily. And she was loved and respected because she really looked after everybody. It's difficult to comprehend how many lives she affected. Of course, her family were incredibly important. She was extremely proud of her son and her grandson and great-grandchildren. And as her parents grew older, they came to live with us in London. Before then, they used to spend 6 months in Spain and 6 months with us. And things were becoming more difficult for Pily's mother, who got sick. We nursed her together. And I was with her, holding her hand when she died at St. Charles Hospital. A year later, her father had a stroke and passed away. And this hit Pily hard. Pily was very distraught. And on the day of her father's funeral, we got up early to organize the food. And Pily was really upset. And she had just lost her mother and now her father. But then came a terrible news that her brother, Jose Maria, had just been killed. He had been in a terrible road accident and died underneath a lorry. It was an incredible blow for my wife. And I'm not too sure she ever recovered. The family was so close and so much part of each other's lives. It was devastating for her to lose everybody in such a short space of time. I tried to console her by taking her on holiday. Our last trip together was a drive around Europe. I decided to take Pily to see the French wine country. So we drove to Champagne, went around the Champagne vineyards, and then we drove to Burgundy and went around, like Clos Vosges and some of the other famous vineyards. We then went on to Switzerland, to Zurich, and spent some time with some friends. Then we drove on to Milan, where she found a shopping centre. She was overwhelmed with that one. From there, we drove to Venice. She loved Venice, and we drank champagne in a gondola. And then on to Florence. Wow, that just took her breath away. We had 5 days in Ostia on the beach, and then 3 days in Rome. She just loved every minute of it. But even so, something wasn't right. We came back and we realised Pily had the onset of dementia. And this changed our life completely. And around 2015, her condition became so bad that she had to give up work. It was a very difficult time for her. Our whole world came crashing down from being forced to give up work. It was a terrible blow. And she lived for other people, so being isolated, it was very hard for her. Of course, the stress and problems related to the refurbishment of the tower made everything worse. And we were leaseholders, and we bought our flat in 1994. So we were already involved in disputes with the council and the TMO, which you'll hear about probably in statements that were made. And the stress was upsetting, but terrible things for Pily to deal with. All I could do was try to make her feel secure and comfortable.
I think you're about to tell us now a little about the night of the fire, aren't you?
Yes. On the night of the fire, I was with my wife on the night of the fire, and we both fallen asleep on the sofa watching DVD, and I woke to discover the building was on fire. I've given a statement about this. But I can say that it was impossible to carry my wife down, well, it's actually about 40 flights of stairs. So we had to wait to be rescued. During the rescue, she had to be carried out by 4 fire officers, emerging comatized, with most of her clothes cut off. I tried to get to her, but I had to be given triage for smoke inhalation. I was convinced that my wife was dead, but miraculously she survived and was rushed to hospital. I was taken to the ambulance, and we were told we were following Pily to the same hospital. But when I got to Chelsea and Westminster, there was no sign of Pily. I was suffering badly from smoke inhalation, but I was in a panic about my wife. No one had any information about her or where she was, or let alone whether she was still alive. And it wasn't until the following day that I finally got a phone call to say Pily was at the Royal Free Hospital in Hampstead. Initially, I was refused permission to leave Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, but I eventually checked out to go and see Pily. When I got to the Royal Free, she was in a terrible state. She was suffering badly from the effects of inhalation, and I later learned that her body was cut and bruised all over. But the trauma has had a terrible effect on Pily's dementia, and she was very distressed. How do you explain what had happened to a person in her condition? That our house had gone, our dog had gone, our good friends and neighbours may have passed, and many friends were missing. And that our parents' ashes, which we kept in the flat, had gone. Everything was gone. It was just too much. So I had to try to explain with little bits of information to help her guide her through the trauma. Of course, I was still in trauma myself, but it was much harder for her. I was struggling with the effects of the fire myself, and then I was told a little later that my heart was dangerously enlarged and that I had a severe leaking valve and I would need an operation. So I had my operation on the 18th of December, and by this time my wife was in a care home and I was residing in a hotel. The operation didn't go too well and I needed more surgery at the end, and I was in intensive care for up to 6 days. It was now, of course, December the 25th, and I was desperate to see Pily. The hospital agreed to let me go, and I was recovering from my operation when Pily had a brain hemorrhage in early January, which caused a massive stroke. She was on life support in the hospital. The night of her stroke, I managed to say a few words to each other, but then she fell silent. After 2 weeks of life support, they told me there was nothing they could do. So she was put in a room. They gave me a mattress so that I can sleep on the floor. I had to stay there with her. I didn't want to leave the room. I just stayed there for the whole week, listening and holding her hand, just like I had done with her mother. On January 29th, Pily took her last breath. Just as her son walked in the room, it was as she had been waiting for him to be there. So she was heard, and that's the way she would have wanted him to be there. Sorry. All that life, the essence of a person, how they lived their life was gone. It doesn't matter what religion or belief you have. It's just a very sad moment. We don't know what life is really. We don't really know what we are or who we are or what life has in store. But we're just truly blessed, and I'm truly blessed that I had 34 years with such a person. We had fun. We laughed. We got to go through life together, and it was wonderful. And this is all we can do. My wife used to tell me, don't worry about it. She used to like the Bob Marley song, don't worry about a thing, every little thing's gonna be all right. She loved that. She loved playing it again and again. Yeah, Three Little Birds by Bob Marley. And we played this at her funeral. She was cremated at Kensal Green Crematorium, where her parents had been cremated. There was a horse-drawn coach with the close friends following behind in limousines. We congregated at St Clement James Centre, where other people joined the cortege. And carried on up to Labatt Grove, and I suddenly realised there was more and more cars joining us until we got to the fire station. And I looked and saw the entire fire station crew with their engines were standing outside in a guard of honour, and all the fire officers had white roses. They stopped, and they came over and laid the white roses. And by this time I was a bit overwhelmed. But we continued up the Harrow Road and turned to the crematorium. And I couldn't believe my eyes. There was hundreds of people there. And every one of them was wearing incredible, colourful outfits, magnificent, flamboyant outfits. had 34 years with Pily, and they were beautiful, glorious, wonderful years, filled with happiness, love and laughter. I adored her, and we shared it with everybody around us. She was unique, beautiful, exceptional person, and that it's who this tragedy has taken away. It took away our dignity and everything that we had in this world. But let me tell you, no matter what indignities my wife had to suffer, my Pily was perfect.
Nicholas, that was a very beautiful portrait. Can I ask you, because I've been wondering where that amazing picture was taken?
That was in Rome in 2014.
She looks very happy.
Very. It's a beautiful picture. She was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. That was a very moving tribute, and I feel very privileged to have heard it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we have a bit of rearranging to do, so could I trouble you just to leave us for a moment?
Yes, of course.
Oh, thank you. I've been reminded. Forgive me. Thank heavens I've got people around who know what they're doing. I think you've done a PowerPoint for us, haven't you?
Yes.
Yes, well, thank you. I'm so sorry.
¿Grabando? Muy bien. Me llamo Maria Del Pilar, pero toda la gente me llama Pily, ¿no? Como en España, lógico. Mando muchos recuerdos para tus papás, que no los conozco, pero me gustaría mucho conocerlos. También mando para tu novio, que aunque no lo conozco, como es gallego, y yo también, que yo soy del Ferrol, nacida allí, pues imagínate, fantástico. Y a tus suegros también. ¿Tienes suegro, perdón? A tus suegros. ¿Y qué más? Y, en fin, que estoy muy encantada de que tú estuvieras aquí, muy encantada. Y Francesca es adorable, no puede ser mejor chica. Cualquier persona puede vivir con ella, fíjate. Maravillosa. Con eso lo digo todo. Ahora va a hablar Nicky en inglés, lógico que él es inglés. Come on, say something.
Welcome to London.
Thank you
very much.
No,
please.
No, say something, Nicky, please.
I can't say nothing else.
What do you mean you can't say
Hola.
something else?
Okay.
No, in English, love. In
Come
English.
back, come back.
Oh, come back, all right. This is my husband. Ay, perdón, este es mi marido.
Bueno, pues nada, entonces.
Habla. Speak. Speak. Just say hello.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Okay, good luck.